friends, and welcome to another episode of my 100 book challenge. This is episode 5, so we're halfway through. Yay! We're getting so close to the finish line. So today I'm going to be talking about books 41 to 50. Let's go. All right, number 41 was A Prisoner of Birth by Jeffrey Archer, and I have such mixed feelings about this book because, if you separate the author from the book, I would give it 5 out of 5. That is what I ended up rating it, 5 out of 5, because I just really loved the story and I loved the writing so much. So it's actually a retelling of the Count of Monte Cristo set in modern times, which is one of my favorite movies. I just love that kind of rags to riches revenge story. It's such a classic. So this is a story about Danny Cartwright, and he's out celebrating his engagement at the bar one night when he gets into this fight with a bunch of really rich jerks at the bar, and somebody ends up getting beaten to death, and Danny gets framed for the murder and sent away to jail. So he meets this wealthy soldier guy in the prison, and he kind of learns how to talk properly from him and learns about science and math and how to make investments on the stock market. And then he eventually escapes prison and goes out and assumes that rich guy's identity because he gets shanked in prison. And I just really liked it. Had so many dry courtroom scenes and really back and forth courtroom stuff between lawyers and judges, which sounds kind of boring, but I found it so fascinating and I really enjoyed it a lot. I listened to what's happening to my chest here. Do you see that? I don't know what that is. Just ignore that. So if it was just the book on its own, definitely 5 out of 5. But then after I finished reading it, I did some research on the author Jeffrey Archer, and you guys should go check out his Wikipedia page because yikes. So he's just basically some sort of a corrupt politician, conservative politician who's done a lot of really questionable things in his lifetime and then decided to become an author. So props to him for getting on a better path, but at the same time, I don't know if I want to support that type of an author when there's so many other writers out there who, are not fundamentally questionable people when it comes to their morals. So I feel like this was a really fun book to read, but that's enough Jeffrey Archer, because I just don't want to support that, Number 42 was You and Me Always by Jill Mansell. This was a British rom-com book, which I just wanted as a palate cleanser after the huge long book that was A Prisoner of Birth. So this was really cute and fluffy. It's if you like Bridget Jones' Diary and books like that, you definitely would enjoy it. So the story is this girl, Lily, meets this actor who's kind of escaped to the small British town that she lives in because he's hiding from the paparazzi or whatever. And so she meets him, and they kind of form a bit of a relationship, but she also has this childhood friend, Dan, and they've got kind of a thing going too, so it's kind of a bit of a triangle between the three of them. And it's just full of humor and comedy and hijinks. And it was just a cute, fun read. And I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Next was The Infinite Noise by Lauren Shippen. This book focuses on this boy, Caleb, who is a football star, and seems like a really nice dude, but then all of a sudden he develops this power where he can feel other people's emotions. So he can sense them to the point where if somebody's angry and their anger is to such a level that it starts seeping into him, and then he takes on that anger and becomes angry himself and can fly off into a rage. So it's such a cool book because it's he's just a supernatural empath, and he just emotes with all of the people around him and feels their emotions to such a level, but it's a supernatural, it's really happening. It's not just he's an empath, it's supernatural. Editing Sarah here, so I actually messed up the plot a little bit. So it's actually Adam who has the crush on Caleb, so he's really hardcore pining after Caleb, but from Caleb's perspective, they just start off as friends. So I want to clarify that. So it's a relationship about Caleb and Adam, and then also Caleb dealing with this atypical supernatural power that he has, and talking to his therapist about it and trying to learn how to live with this power that he has. The interactions between Caleb and Adam were really cute, but I kind of just wish there was more because it was very, very emotion heavy. So the big kind of relationship dynamic between Caleb and Adam is that Adam suffers from severe depression. So Caleb can feel that depression, which actually kind of helps him in a way because he can tell when he's being depressed and he's not just like, oh, why is he being a jerk? But he can like feel how much pain Adam is in. So he kind of knows how to handle it and knows what Adam needs, which is really nice for Adam in a way, but also kind of sucks because then Caleb has to feel that depression along with him. So it's hard to be around him sometimes. So I really, really loved that dynamic, and I thought Adam was such a beautiful, complex character. I think he was my favorite part of the book, but ultimately it was just a little bit too up here, and there wasn't enough action and plot happening. So I ended up giving it 3 out of 5 stars, just because it was good, but I wish it had like taken it to the next level. The next book I read was Spin the Dawn by Elizabeth Lim, and this was really cool. It just made me want to sew, and like I actually picked up embroidery after I read this book. So the summary describes it as a mix of Project Runway and Mulan, and I feel like that's pretty accurate-ish. I mean, it's very surface level accurate. So the story follows this girl, Maya, who is the daughter of a tailor, and it's kind of this fantasy ancient Asia, because there's kind of different countries are represented that could be equivalent to real countries in Asia, like China and Japan and stuff. So her brothers there's this big war, and her brothers go off to war. Some of them don't return, and then one of them comes back injured. And then this palace official comes and says, oh, we're asking the top tailors in the country to come to the palace and vie to be the next palace tailor because the old one died. And so only men are allowed to be tailors. So Maya's brother is injured, and her father is like really old and not doing too good since his son died and his wives died. So she ends up cutting her hair and pretending to be her brother. And so she goes to the palace, is a really, really good tailor on its own, but then her father gives her these scissors that used to belong to her mother. And it turns out that they're magic scissors, so they can craft these magical, beautiful garments just through the magic of the scissors. And so people keep trying to sabotage her work throughout this competition, and then she uses her magic scissors to create these fantastic garments. And she also meets this sorcerer named Eden, and they form this really sweet relationship throughout the book too, while she's trying to become the tailor. And there's lots of epic drama as well. Like, it's not all frou-frou Project Runway. Like, there is art and tailoring and sewing, but it's also like epic journeys and fantasy and magic. So it had all of that fun stuff in it. I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars, and I really want to read the second book. I'm not sure if it's out yet, but it's definitely on my list. Next was Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston, and this was a reread. I actually read it last year, but I just love it so much, and I was like, you know what, I just want to read it again. So I did, and it was equally as wonderful. Honestly, it's just, this book just like takes my heart and just like it just, I'm like having trouble coming up with words to describe how wonderful it is. So the story is, it's a fictional future world where there is a female president running America, and she has 2 half-Hispanic children, and so they're like the powered young adults of the American political scene. And then on the other hand, there's this fictional royal family and a son, Henry, who seems like the perfect golden boy. And it's one of those wonderful like enemies to friends to lovers kind of stories that it's probably my favorite thing to read. I just love the emotions and the relationship dynamics that happen. So it follows the son of the president, Alex, and the son of a fictional royal family, Henry, who start off being kind of enemies, and then Alex like hilariously knocks over the royal wedding cake at Henry's older brother's wedding, which is a huge international debacle. So then they have to kind of pair up together and pretend to be friends and pretend to get along for PR purposes, so that the world's not like, oh, is this going to be the start of the Third World War? So as they start hanging out together, they get to kind of get to know each other more and become closer and closer friends, and then eventually they fall in love, and it's adorable. And yeah, it's just, it makes me so hopeful and also sad at the same time, because Alex's mother and the way the world reacts to Alex and Henry's relationship is just the way that I wish the world could be. And instead of this beautiful woman running the country, we have he who shall not be named. And I'm just, it's, you know, it's just kind of sad that this is the reality that we live in right now. But at least you get to read this book and escape into that fantasy and just enjoy that loving environment for a little while. So it's one of my favorite books of 2020, and such a good read. 5 out of 5. Number 46 was The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka, and I didn't like it. I don't get it. Why is this book a classic? Can someone tell me, why is this book a classic? I gave it 2 stars, which is pretty uncommon for me. I don't usually rate books that low. But it's just like a guy who turns into a bug, and then he like scuttles around his apartment until his family gets grossed out enough that they just ditch him, and then he dies. And that's the story. It's just a guy who turns into a bug. And I'm like, I'm sure there's some sort of like metaphor for humanity in there somewhere, but I was just like, dude's a bug. Like, dude's a bug. I don't know. It's just, I don't know what else to say. I didn't like it. It wasn't for me. Next, I read One of Us Was Lying by Karen and McManus. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I think I listened to the audiobook of this. And so it's about these 4 characters who, it's kind of like the Breakfast Club in a way, because it's these 4 main characters who are in detention after school. And then there's this 5th boy who has this gossip blog and like spreads all these nasty rumors about the kids around school. So the boy is in the room and then suddenly has some sort of a reaction and dies right in front of them. So then the book follows the 4 perspectives of these students as they're like covered by all of this media attention and getting interviewed by the police, and everyone's trying to figure out like, did they kill the boy? Like, what happened? How did he die? So yeah, I love The Breakfast Club. It's one of my favorite movies. So immediately I was just like, yes, like I love it when you have this group of characters who normally wouldn't be together and are from very, very different backgrounds, but for some reason they're forced together and they have to interact. I love that kind of a vibe. So I really enjoyed this book, and I also love murder mysteries. So I thought the ending had a good twist. It was maybe slightly expected if you looked for it, but I still thought it had a good ending. I have thought about reading the second one because there's one that follows one of the characters' younger sisters, like a few years down the road. I'm not sure if I'm going to read it yet. It's on my TBR, but I don't know. I haven't been in the mood for it yet, so we'll see. Number 48 is Sorry I'm Late, I Didn't Want to Come by Jessica Pan. And it's a year of living extrovertedly. And I loved this so much. I read it kind of right at the start of the pandemic. So it was just a nice, like, I get to vicariously live through this girl who's traveling around the world and putting herself out there and doing all of these things while I'm, like, stuck on my couch. So it is a nonfiction book. It's about Jessica Pan. She's a writer, and she lives in London, and she's basically a shy introvert. So there's different scales of introversion and extroversion. It's not just black and white. So you can be like, I classify myself as an introvert, but I'd say I'm like closer to the borderline between introverted and extroverted, where like I like being social, but then also I need time after that to like be quiet and recharge. And also I'm not like afraid to talk to people or nervous about it, things like that. Whereas you can have people like Jessica, who she describes herself as a shy introvert. So she has a really hard time like going to parties where she doesn't know anyone, or, you know, speaking up in meetings and putting herself out there. So she found herself in this really kind of a depressed phase of her life where she was jobless. She didn't have a lot of friends because her friends had all moved away, and she just really felt like she was stuck in a rut. So she decided to challenge herself and just say yes to everything and try to learn how to become more extroverted and see if it would, you know, improve her quality of life or help her make more friends. And she does all of this stuff, like she signs up for a improv class, she performs a comedy routine, she flies randomly to Budapest for a vacation. She just does all of this fun stuff, and I just loved her voice in this book, and I loved reading about her struggling and doing it anyways. Like, those are some of my favorite stories to read, are people who have something that makes them struggle, you know, they're depressed or they're anxious or whatever, but they just fight so hard anyways to go out and do what they want. Like, those kinds of stories inspire me so much, and I feel like it's just, that's how I want to live my life, is, you know, I be scared and do it anyways. That's one of my mottos. So I just love any story like that, and so I just really got to live vicariously through Jessica in this book, and it was such a fun read, and I ended up giving it 4 to 5 stars. Okay, we're getting close to the end. Number 49 was Frogkisser by Garth Nix, which is kind of random, I know. I'm not really a big middle grade reader. I didn't actually know it was that middle grade when I picked it up. I have read Sabriel by Garth Nix, which was pretty fun. I enjoyed it. And I was just looking randomly for something to listen to by audiobook, and I saw this, and it seemed like a cute summary, and it was a really short audiobook, so I thought I would just check it out. I ended up giving it 3 out of 5 stars. So like I said, middle grade is not really my genre. And it was very, very middle grade. So I feel like if 12-year-old Sarah had read this, I would have really enjoyed it. But it just wasn't quite for me this time around. The general story is this young Princess Anya who has an older sister, and the sister falls in love with a prince, but the evil magician in the castle turns the prince into a frog. So in the book, she gets this like magical kissing salve, and then she has to go around collecting a bunch of frogs and kissing them to try and turn the frog back into a prince. And along the way, there's really cute talking dogs. Like, the palace is guarded by a bunch of soldier dogs who can all talk, which I thought was really cute, because they are dogs, but they talk. So it's a dog who enjoys sniffing things and chasing squirrels and like eating a bone, but it also is a palace guard and will be like, I'll protect you, Anya. So it was really cute. So she has a little dog that she travels with, and she meets like a boy who's turned into a talking newt, and just a whole cast of random characters. Robin Hood. Yeah, it's pretty random. I feel like that was a bit of a mishmash of a few different fairy tale stories mixed in there, which I don't know if I loved. Again, that's why I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I feel like it was okay for a younger audience, but maybe not quite what I enjoy reading. So after I read that book, it reminded me of a middle school book that I actually really, really loved when I was in grade 7 or 8, and I hadn't thought about it in years, but then reading Frogkisser just made me think of it. So it's called Once Upon a Marigold by Ferris, and I felt like I had to reread it and see if it held up and was still going to be one of my favorite middle grade books. I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars this time around, and it was really, really cute. I mean, you do have to get past the beginning part where there's like some stuff with a troll, and the troll is a bit odd, but once you get past the troll, it's really cute. So it's a story about this boy, Christian, who runs away when he's young, and he meets this troll in the woods, and he goes to live with the troll in the troll's glittering gemstone caves, where every cave room is a different color of gemstone. And so he lives in this cave, and he kind of grows up and becomes a teenager. And then across the river on the other side of the forest, there's a castle, and there's a princess there, Princess Marigold, who looks like she's having a bit of a miserable time. Her stepmother's kind of awful to her, and her father is sick and he's not doing so well. and the stepmother wants to marry Marigold off and kind of like get rid of her and offload her so she can control the castle. So Christian trains these pigeons to fly messages, like messenger pigeons. So they send each other notes back and forth before the two of them ever meet in person, and they become friends, and it's kind of like the first friend either of them have ever had. So they send these messages back and forth, and then eventually Christian's like, I love her, I have to go meet her. So he leaves home and he travels over to the castle and starts working there so he can be near to Marigold and be her friend. And then there's this whole big story where the queen shows just how evil she is and tries to take over the palace and tries to kill everybody, so they have to fight her off. And it was just a grand old time. It was fun. It just reminded me of reading it as a kid and made me really happy. And apparently there's a sequel. I had no idea. But I think there's at least one. There might be more in the series. I don't think I'm gonna read it just because, like, this book was nice for me because I had read it when I was younger and I liked it when I was younger. But I feel like if I didn't have that nostalgic tie to it, it would again just be a little, like, too young for me. But it was really, really cute to read and I had a good time with it. All right, we are officially halfway through the books. I'm super excited to get to the end. I have something fun planned, a little video vlog for the last 5 books in the series. So you'll have to wait and keep watching, and hopefully I will be able to post it in the next couple weeks here. Thanks for watching.